Hello. Following on from the simple book cover, I'm just going to show you the layout of how you put in, so if you want the embellishments, as in to put a closure in it with a button, or even a tie if you choose to. So just to recap briefly on the measuring, if you lay your flexible tape measure onto the table and push the edge of the book up, we want the whole of the book, we want the width of the fabric to be 1¼ inches wider than the book. So lay your book on top of the flexible tape measure, pass your flexible tape measure over the top and just take it to the edge of the book, and that will give you your measurement that you need to cut your fabric. So that's for the width of the book, and then just do exactly the same for the length of the book as well. So I'm putting the edge of the book on my 1¼ inch mark on my tape measure, and that measures 9¾ inches. So that gives me the measurement for the fabric. So for that we need 3 pieces of fabric, all cut exactly the same size. 1 for the outer fabric, 1 for the inner, and 1 for the pieces that secure the book in place. So I've already got those done. That is going to be my lining fabric. Now, once again, just to remind you, this fabric's exactly the same size. All I'm going to do is just fold it in half, like so. And I'll give that a little press. And that then would be cut in half, which will give you the pieces for the inner of your book, okay? And then all I've done is I've just top stitch down the edges of them. So this actually now is going to be, as I'd already done that, all I'm going to do now is actually layer it up. So I have my lining fabric, which is the green, and I'm going to actually put the wadding onto this. It doesn't matter whether you put the wadding onto the lining fabric or the outer fabric. So I'm just going to flip that over and put the wrong side facing up. I've already got a piece of wadding, which I've already put 505 on here, and I'm going to lay that so it's in the center of my book, like so. So that's on the wrong side of the fabric. So just lay that out. Now, the 2 inners that I prepared earlier and top stitched, just make sure you've got the orientation the correct way. And I'm going to place 1 on the left hand side and 1 on the right hand side. Just make sure I've got it the right way up. That's the one, like so. Now this is where we place the elastic or ribbons. If you wanted to put a ribbon, so you tied it, then you would put a ribbon on both sides. I'm actually going to use an elastic. I've just got Alicia selected this lovely green that I'm going to use today, and this one just happens to have a metal piece in it. Some of them don't, but this one does. So all I need to do is just clip that piece out. Like so. Now, if you're going to do a closure with an elastic, you need to be placing it on the right hand side, okay? Because when we close the book, we want the elastic to come over to the front, not the other way around. So when you're placing your elastic, you need to make sure that it's all laying nice and flat. So I'm hoping that you can see it on my hand, that I've got those 2 edges together. And I'm actually going to fold this in half and just put a little finger press there because I actually would prefer my closure to be in the centre rather than off centre. And I'm just going to lay that like so. Now, if you choose to, you can actually machine this all the way down if you want to, but I'm actually going to pin it to start with. And I'm just going to let those elastics just protrude out a little bit. Obviously, make sure this is the length you want it to be. If your book is particularly slim, then you don't want a massive loop on it. If it's really chunky, make sure that when the elastic is going to pass over the edge of the book, it will actually reach through the other side. So I'm actually going to pin that in position like so. And I do like the elastics to actually butt up to each other. So I've just pinned that like so. Yeah. I'm just going to take that one off because I'm just going to do a little running stitch over that just to anchor it in position. So I'm just going to very briefly go to the sewing machine and just take that in. Now, when you do this, make sure you're doing it on the edge because any stitching we don't want to be able to see on the front. So I'm just pushing those elastics up to each other. And once I've done that, I'm actually going to reverse back over it and forward because I want it to be nice and strong. And it goes through, no problem at all. Now, here I'm hoping you can actually just see this and that's just sticking out. So now I'm going to trim those two tails off. I'm just going to knit those off like so. So now the elastic is in position on the right hand side of my book. Now what I want to do is I actually want to put a ribbon in it so I can actually save my pages. Now make sure when you're starting you're using your ribbon is long enough. You can have how many ever you want to. I tend to just do it double. I find that's adequate and that's what I do in my diaries. So once again we're going to fold it over and just finger press the edge of the book here, and I'm just going to put that then. Again, I'm going to let that protrude a little bit because I want to make sure I can anchor that in nicely. And once again, I'll put a pin in there. And I'm just going to do a little running stitch on there, just the same as I did on the elastic. Okay. So again, a very scant 1/4 inch. So very, very narrow because I don't want the stitching to be showing. And once again, I'm just reversing over that. I would be if my needle hadn't come unthreaded. So let's just very, very quickly rethread that needle. Here we go. There's nothing like working with live TV for everything to go wrong. Right, just make sure that I'm positioning the needle. Here we go. Remember, whenever you use your needle threader, never position the needle with the flywheel, because otherwise that is how you actually break the hook that actually takes your thread through. Always position the needle with the either the up-down button, if you have one, or the foot pedal, and that will make sure that the little hook will come through the eye of the needle and make sure nothing gets damaged. Okay, so just luckily I've got a little crease mark there still. I'm just going to pop that back in place, pop the foot down, and there we go, all sorted. Okay, right, so we've got that in position and we've got that in position. So all that now remains for me to do is just place that one back on again. Remember, I've got the top stitching here and the raw edges here. So all I'm going to do now is place the front of my book cover the right way round, making sure it's the right orientation, and I'm going to place that on the top of everything, like so, and I'm going to pop a couple of pins in to make sure nothing is going amiss. Just move that a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to get 2 different colour ones just to mark where I want to sew to and from. The yellow one here. So those are my markers where I'm going to start and finish sewing to leave me my area for turning through. I want yellow. There we go. So once again now I'm going to very quickly go to the sewing machine and I'm going to very quickly sew all the way around there, just like I did in the previous video. And then when I turn it through, you'll be able to see where everything's in position for us. Okay, here we go. Remove those pins. Make sure the ribbons are out of the way and I'm not going to actually be stitching anything in. Right up to the edge. Needle down, pivot, all the way up. And remember, because we've cut the wadding narrower, I'm not sewing through wadding, so it's nice and easy. It's not bulky or anything. Go straight through, no problem at all. Just going to give it a little peek and make sure that that ribbon's down nice and flat and I haven't twisted it at all. Good. Now when I come down this last one, when I come to where the elastics are, or whatever you're going to use as your item to close your book with, I'm going over it, but I'm actually going to reverse and go over it 2 or 3 times because I want that to be really, really nice and strong, just because that's where the pressure will be put on it. All the way down to the bottom and back round to my marker pin. Okay, so there we are now. So all I'm going to do now is, once again, I'm going to turn it through, and to do that I'm starting off by going into a corner, pulling that through and going all the way around. Now, as I turn it through, you can see the elastic. Making sure everything is caught in. And I'm just going to push those corners through. Like so. And that's looking rather nice. Right, okay, so I'm just going to give it a very quick press and go all the way around it, and then you'll be able to see how it all works. So leave the ribbons out of the way, and just give it a little press inside. This is the closure again. I'm just going to press that in to make sure I've got all those edges meeting nicely. Like I say, normally I would hand stitch this as well, but because of the time factor, I'm not going to. I'm just going to take a pin and I'm just going to make sure that I'm easing everything out right on the edge where the seams are, to make sure I'm not twisting it or leaving any bulk there. And do remember, if you're using elastics, don't iron them because they might melt. And I'm only saying that because I might have done it myself before. Not on a book cover, but on masks I've been making. I wasn't very impressed with myself, I must admit. But hey ho, I've told lots of people to stop those doing the same thing. So hopefully it's helped some people out. We all make mistakes. There we go. So I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just very, very quickly going to sew all the way around it. And when I do it, I will be actually pulling this down. If I want to, I could actually pin that in place just to make sure that it's sitting nicely. So I think I'll just actually pop a pin in it there this time to make sure that's all out of the way. And this is out of the way, so I'm just going to sew that around, making sure if I tuck that in there, that's not going to get sewn in as well. So I do tend to start when I'm sewing from the area that's open to make sure that I've caught in the part. I'm going to tuck those in there actually. Go up with me. That's it. So I'm going to start off in the area that's actually open, that I've turned it through. There we go. The pins out of the way. And once again, I'm top stitching it all the way around now. And as you saw before, I haven't got a walking foot on, or an even feed foot, or a dual feed, or active feed. So I'm just going to use a pin to put in the corner of the book behind the needle and just ease that through. Now, once again, when I go over this area, this time because I'm top stitching, I'm just stitching straight over where the elastic is. So that's been sewn numerous times now. So that's not going to move or go anywhere, and it will be totally secure. This is the area where I have the ribbon for my bookmarkers. So I've just made sure that that's sitting nice and flat underneath. I mean, obviously when you go around here, if you wanted to use a small decorative stitch, you could, but don't use one too wide, otherwise your book is not going to fit into the area because you'll be taking space up that you haven't allowed for. Okay. Needle up, pin in that corner, just to make sure I get no hover in there. There we go. Down. And almost back to the area I started. So I'm just going to nip off those beginning threads that I had. And pin in just behind the needle, just to ease that through. And we are back to the beginning. So I take those off there. And I'll remove that pin. So we now have a book cover that has a closure and some ribbons. So once again, take the book, feed it into one side, like so. Open it up into the opposite side. Have the markers. And this is now where, once you've got your book in, you can work out where you need to sew your button on, like so. Just remember that when you sew it on, don't sew it through this part as well. Make sure you're just sewing it through the top area and not through this piece here. And there you go. So if that was to go in there, like so, oops, go in. You would have your button in position. Doesn't want to go in, behave. And I'll just take that out because that's the pins. I haven't got a rounded pin on me. That is where it'll be, and that's going to make it close, just like it has on this one. Really, really simple. But that's the placement that you would need to be using if you want to put a closure on it. Like I say, this could actually be, you could have put a ribbon in here and then you could just have tied a little bow at the side. And that's what I tend to do on my needle cases. So I hope that's just clarified. If you do want to put a closure on your diaries or notebooks, thank you for joining us again and hope to see you again very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.